You know, the warning signs and the types of things you should look for in an elder abuse case or a nursing home case is, we see a lot of times bed sores. And that just means that people are not being taken care of properly. They're not getting out of bed when they need to, or they're not being rotated properly, because there's no reason to get a bed sore. So that's a very fundamental thing to look for. But also, if you're talking to your family member or loved one and they're complaining about the conditions, or they're complaining about not being treated properly, give that serious consideration, because a lot of times these places are understaffed and those complaints are real. And sometimes we want to discount those, so you should never discount that either.
Sekarang udah tangan nih pula-pula coba kasih bayar kan? Apa kasih bayar kan?
Dokter obat dulu.
Hah?
Ada obat.
Enggak, gua kasih obat tau. Gua kasih obat tau. Berarti kan sini dalam kan? Hah? Hah? Gila. Gila.
We demand our civil rights.
They are a small but growing movement called the National Association to Stop Guardian Abuse. They say the disabled and elderly are being preyed upon by the legal system, by crooked lawyers and the courts, who they say scam millions of dollars by having older people declared guardians of the courts, depriving them and their families of their rights and taking their assets. They say that the courts are abusing the guardianship laws and that people's civil rights, constitutional rights, are being violated by the courts. Protesting in front of the Justice Department, they met with a few members of Congress demanding something be done. With millions of baby boomers turning into senior citizens soon, they're warning that billions of dollars will be stolen from the elderly and their families by probate courts, which they're claiming conspire with lawyers and state agencies like Adult Services to rob older people of their homes and life savings, often declaring them without proper evidence incompetent to handle their own financial affairs. It's a big business, they say, lawyers getting rich.
They grab the estate and divvy it up, and they intend to do that for the baby boomers because it will now bring in trillions to their pockets.
They're destroying my family. I mean, they took all my rights away, my husband's rights.
We are the victims because we are trying to protect our parents, our husbands, our wives, our sons, our daughters, our spouses from exploitation, financial exploitation.
Assault on the elderly in their golden years, says the group, citing case after case of the judicial system collaborating to put elderly or disabled people in a conservatorship status with the courts, giving the lawyers and the courts, without family having a say, complete control over an elderly person's life savings.
In a matter of moments, a person loses their entire liberty and dignity, their decision-making ability, and it's handed over to third persons that absolutely take total control of their lives.
The aging of the U.S. population in record numbers over the next 5 years, the baby boomer generation, they say that unless what they call a corrupt system is fixed, millions will be robbed of all they own by unscrupulous lawyers, social workers, corrupt probate courts, and the state agencies who are supposed to be protecting the elderly, not abusing them. Mike Kellerman, Press TV, Washington.
You know, unfortunately, it plays a huge role. Many people that run nursing homes are in it to make profits. They take your money, but they provide inadequate care. And it's very troubling to find a place that cares more about business than providing health care, but it's a very common problem throughout the state of California.
And this morning we are following breaking news out of the Acres Homes area. We have exclusive video here where police have converged on a house in the 8,000 block of White Castle Lane. Several people, 4 in fact, were being held captive there against their will. Welcome to Eyewitness News this morning. I'm Art Rascone.
And I'm Melanie Lawson. For the very latest on this still developing story in Acres Homes, we want to go straight to Eyewitness News reporter Pooja Lodia. And Pooja, at this point, do we know why they were being held?
At this point, we do not, but we do know that police are describing this scene as a prison camp. Here behind me, you can actually see one of the men who police tell us was being held here against his will. That man over there in the striped shirt he, I guess, told police that he had been here for several years. Police arrived here on scene just after 8 a.m. They say they got a call for a welfare check. When they arrived, they tell us that the door was nailed shut. There were allegedly 4 people in that room over there to the right, the one with the foil sort of over the door. That's where police say that 4 people were being held. Police say that the room was filthy, didn't have any furniture inside of it. Police have actually described it as almost a warehouse for people. Now, Sky Eye HD was overhead. As some of those alleged victims were brought out of the home, there are 4 of them. They are aged 79, 54, 74, and about 65 years old. Police say one of those men actually told them that he had been living here for 10 years, and 3 of those men were in such bad physical shape they couldn't even walk out of the home without help. Also living in this house, 3 women. That is a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter, also a man in his 40s. That man, police say, has been taken into custody, maybe facing charges at this point. Police tell us it appears that the suspect was possibly keeping these 4 men inside the house. They believe he may have had power of attorney over them.
One of them seemed to think that he was just picked up off the street, kind of recruited to come and stay here in exchange for beer and cigarettes and a place to stay. He had to turn over his Social Security check.
And again, 3 of those alleged victims were taken to the hospital. They're at LBJ Hospital where they are expected to be okay. One of those men you are seeing right now, he is still here on the scene. We are told that somebody is going to be coming here to pick him up to potentially take him to the Veterans Administration Hospital. And we have spoken to several neighbors who live around here. Many of them tell us that they didn't really know anything suspicious was happening here, but they tell us that they do recognize those alleged victims. So they thought that those men were potentially living here, maybe friends of the family, something like that. So there is, of course, still a lot of confusion out here. Adult Protective Services, we're told, is on the way over here to make sure that these men here are doing okay. For now, we are live in North Houston. Pooja Lodia, 13 Eyewitness News.
Pooja, this is just a mind-boggling story as we're listening to you talk. So do we understand that these men were kept here for years and years in return for somebody taking their Social Security and welfare checks?
That's what Houston police are telling us at this point, that it does seem like a suspect who lived here had some sort of power of attorney over them, was taking their money in some way in return for allowing them to stay here. But again, they're describing that room where these men were allegedly living in as a warehouse, as a prison camp, as a filthy, dirty place with no furniture, as really no place anybody should be living in.
Wow, and it's awfully surprising as well that apparently they were kept in such bad conditions that they had to be, well, they were on stretchers when they were rolled out of there.
Right. Police say many of those men, I mean, we are talking about elderly men. We're talking about men who were in their late 70s, early 80s. But police are saying that many of them seemed so confused. Many of them didn't even want to leave the house. They didn't know what was happening. And you're seeing right now one of those alleged victims, he's walking around freely. He did not want to speak to us. But police have told us before that this man didn't want to leave the house when they came to ask him to leave and to go to the hospital. Allegedly, he didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay here.
I guess the only home he's known for quite a while.
Wow.
Well, we know there are lots of questions you've got to ask Pooja, so we're going to turn you back over to the scene there, and if you find out more, if you would get back to us, that'd be great. Thank you.
Antipsychotics and sedatives or psychotropics in long-term care, I think, are used as a crutch.
Ashley Plummer has worked in nursing facilities for over a decade. She's frequently seen antipsychotic drugs used to control residents.
It's kind of, do you treat a person with an antipsychotic to get them to be quiet and do what they're told, or do you listen to them and see what the behavior is about? You know, I think most of the time it's related to a need. It's a need that's not met. And those behaviors are just a natural, instinctual cry for help that we're sedating. You know, dementia is already so hard. You already lose those memories. You lose kind of that personality that you've always had. But on top of that, throw, you know, a few Seroquels on that, and then you're just drooling. I mean, it's taking away even your right to be upset about your disease process. It's taking away your right to mourn what you're going through. It comes from like the basic infrastructure of the facilities that we have. I think it's just the way they're built. They're built to take care of a lot of people with not very many people, you know, and a lot of these are corporations and they're profiting off, you know, and they push for cutting hours, no more overtime, this and that. And with that, I think it's directly correlated with some of the antipsychotic use.
You know, if you've got a loved one or a family member that's a victim of nursing home neglect or abuse, contact a lawyer. One, you can get compensated for the pain and suffering that your loved one has gone through. If there's lost wages involved or past or future medical bills involved, you can get compensated for that. And two, frankly, we want to put them out of business so it doesn't happen to anybody else.